This is the only video you'll need to get started with N8N. It will take you from a complete beginner all the way through to N8N Master. Whether you're a business owner who wants to implement AI, automate your work, and earn back your time, or you're someone who wants to build and sell AI automations to other businesses. This is the video I wished I had access to when I first started my automation and AI journey. Back then, I wanted to take advantage of this new tech and implement it within my own business and my personal life. But most importantly, I didn't want to get left behind. But the problem is, I got overwhelmed very, very quickly. There was too much stuff out there. Some of it was useful, but most of it was unnecessary, overhyped, and just a bit complicated. And only after making hundreds of workflows within N8N, getting a top-rated Upwork profile for selling AI agents and automation to other businesses for all sorts of tasks, email inbox agents, content creation agents, invoice management agents, and many, many more, I got to see which workflows were actually useful for businesses and which ones they were willing to pay for. I made this video to help you shortcut your path, save you a lot of time and headaches, and share with you only what works today. So get your notes ready and let me show you exactly what we'll be covering in this course. We'll be starting from the basics with what is N8N and why would you choose N8N over other alternatives. We'll be covering if you need to know how to code. Hint, you don't. It's all no code and easily accessible for everyone. We'll be covering what you can actually build for your business with a tool like N8N and how to actually set that up. We'll then be mastering the basics, learning how to work with different data, and building out your very first automation. We'll then be working with data from your business, working out how to handle different file formats, but also building out your very own invoice processing agent that you can use every day in your business. And it wouldn't be a good course for N8N if we didn't cover AI and how to use that in your workflows. So we're going to be breaking down exactly what is an AI agent versus something like ChatGPT and what useful things can we build for your business using these AI agents to help you every day. We'll then be going on to some more advanced techniques of gathering data from outside your business, covering from scratch what is an API, when would I need one for my business, and how to connect to any data source that you need in less than 2 minutes. And finally, we'll be talking about how to make your life incredibly easy, talking about techniques for scaling our workflows and making them reusable with a modular design, as well as all the shortcuts that I've learned over my journey. As you can see, whether you're a complete beginner or somebody already using N8N, this video will help you advance and get even better. So I encourage you to use the chapters within the video to skip to your current level. And by the way, for those of you who are more serious about implementing AI within your business, this course is a part of my paid school community. Inside, you'll find a network of over 300 entrepreneurs on exactly the same journey as you from all over the world. You'll find a template library of N8N workflows that you can implement inside your business today, and many more resources to help you shortcut your path even more. So if you feel like that's you, you can check out the link in the description of the video or go to school.com/scrapes. But for now, let's get started with the course. So getting started, we're going to be talking about workflow automation. Now, simply put, workflow automation is about getting technology to automate your repetitive tasks. So we've got a few examples before we go to N8N and understand what that does there. But say a customer is filling out a form on your website, it might automatically send them a confirmation email and then automatically add them to your database. That is a workflow that's been automated, therefore workflow automation. When you receive an invoice and it's automatically sorted, processed, and sent for approval, again, just another process that's been automated. When you have a new employee that you need to onboard, they join, their accounts and access are automatically created based on their role in the company. Again, a really clear example of something that has been automated already within your business. But we can automate so much more, and we can do it ourselves really simply using something like N8N. And the main benefits, if they're not already obvious, are it saves you time and reduces your manual workload. There are fewer human errors, and we can get consistent results every time because a computer's doing it for us. And it takes away all the mundane work that we have to do day to day. And it allows you to focus on the important tasks within your business, not the ones you don't want to be doing. So N8N is just a workflow automation platform. And there are a few commonly known platforms out there. It enables you to connect to all your favorite services that you currently use within your business. So that might be Slack, Trello, Google Sheets, Outlook, Intercom, your database. It has over 400 pre-built integrations, which mean we don't have to build anything from scratch. If, for example, you wanted to post to LinkedIn, this is inside an N8N workflow, which we'll get to, but you can see they've got a pre-built integration with LinkedIn. So it's plug and play. We don't need to code anything. We can just connect it to our LinkedIn account and tell it what data we want to send. You might have seen some alternative services or used them already, such as Zapier or Make.com. All of these are viable solutions to build out your workflows. But there's some key differences or key benefits that N8N offers over the alternatives, and that's why we've chosen N8N. Firstly, pricing. We're just going to compare something like Zapier to the N8N pricing. At the basic level for Zapier, you're going to be spending $30 per month, and you have restrictions on what you can use in terms of functionality. If you're a bigger business and start to use more tasks per month, it's going to really add up, and you're already at $200 per month without all of the features. Make.com is cheaper than Zapier in terms of pricing, but again, we have limited functionality in Make.com versus N8N. When I see Make.com automations posted, they're often looking like this with a lot going on. And then I see comparisons of N8N flows built with a better feature set. And actually, you could build something like this in fewer steps. So it makes N8N far more flexible. And then in terms of pricing, it's the cheapest option out of the lot. Firstly, you can set it up directly on N8N for £24 a month and have 2,500 workflow executions. So that's 2,500 tasks. And secondly, N8N uses a sustainable use license, which means we can actually host it ourselves. And for unlimited workflow executions, it comes in around $15 to $17 per month. So significantly cheaper, and the feature set is far more advanced to do things in fewer steps. N8N is a no-code software, so you don't need to know any coding to start this course and build your first automation. And from day one, you can have useful things running automatically for you, for your business. So you might be wondering at this point, what could I actually build with something like N8N? The list is endless. Here on screen is a picture of a LinkedIn and Twitter post generator. So it automatically creates all the content tailored to my business needs and posts it to the relevant platforms. I get to approve that in my database exactly on my terms. Here in just 7 steps is an example of a workflow automation that monitors my inbox for customer queries, and any that need escalation, it sends a direct message to me in order to feedback what I want to say and reply to the customer. That feedback is then drafted automatically for me, so I can just push send in my inbox. We have other examples that create and write a blog automatically for us based on tailored SEO keywords, and a complete invoice management system that you're going to actually build out in this course step by step. The possibilities are endless in terms of what you can build out for your business. You just need to take the first step and get started. So let's talk now about hosting and how to set up NAN. So we're going to talk about the two options for hosting here. The first is hosting directly through NAN. So if you are happy to use my affiliate link, then go to nan.partnerlinks.io/scrapesai and come to NAN's homepage, or alternatively go to nan.io. You're going to land on this homepage here. And what we're going to do is we're going to run through the sign up process of getting started for free. And you get a 14-day free trial directly through NAN. You're going to fill out all of your details and give it an account name like your business name. You're then going to start the 14-day trial. And once that has completed, you'll be put onto the starter plan, which is around £24 a month. This is the most straightforward way to get set up. However, self-hosting has other benefits and is really, really simple to set up. If you follow the steps provided, we can do it in under a few minutes. So think of self-hosting as your NAN service being hosted on your own computer, but on a server somewhere in the world. So it means that you don't have to keep your laptop or computer on all times, but your automations will continue to run 24/7. When we sign up through NAN directly, they're just using a server and we're hosting through their server. If you're self-hosting, you're just doing the same, setting up your own server elsewhere. Now, sometimes that comes with having to manage the infrastructure, but I found a service called Alest.io, which we're going to set up now, that fully manages all the infrastructure. So you get the benefits of the low cost of self-hosting, so unlimited workflows for around $15 to $17 a month, but they also have the benefits of managing the infrastructure for you. So it automatically updates the software. You don't have to worry about any changes. It will do that all for you. And we still get the benefits of the low cost and the community features that come with it. So you're going to go to Alest.io and you're going to set up an account there. Once you've set up an account, you'll come into a dashboard like this and you'll have no services here. We're going to go and create a new service in the top right. And thankfully, they've already pre-set up an NAN service for us, so it takes away all the technical details. So we're going to select NAN there. We have the options of different service cloud providers. We're just going to click Hetzner because it's the cheapest and reliable, and then choose the region that's closest to you. It will automatically pick that for you, so we'll leave it like that. We then need to select a service plan. Don't worry about the details here. This basic plan, the cheapest plan, is definitely good enough for your business when you're starting out. I run hundreds of workflows on my server and still have this medium-sized service plan. On the right-hand side, you can see the estimated monthly price of $15, and we're going to hit next on that. We then want to give it a name, so we'll give it a name that makes more sense for us, an admin email, and then we'll stick with level 1 support. Later in the course, we'll talk about backups and error handling and all that, but we don't need any extra from Alest.io. So we're going to go down here and click Create Service. Now that's going to deploy our service. It'll take between 1 and 5 minutes, depending, and you're going to come back and we'll load it up. We're going to come back here and you can see now 5 minutes have gone, but the service is now running and it's showing green here. So we're going to click into that and then we're going to display admin UI. And this has all the details about your server. So if you ever need to change anything, you'd come to this dashboard. So we're going to click on the link that it provides under that. And that's going to open up the NAN page to sign up. So we're going to fill out the details here and then we'll hit next. And that is basically it for setting up your own self-hosted server. So incredibly easy. We're just going to fill out the survey for NAN there. You get 3 additional paid features forever if you register your community edition, and they're really helpful. And we touch on them later on in the course. The first is getting workflow history, which we know version control is very important, advanced debugging, and then you're also able to search your past execution logs. So I definitely recommend getting that free license key and registering that because those features are really helpful, and we'll touch on them later. You then come into the dashboard for NAN. So this is where you start by creating your own automations. A personal preference of mine is changing the theme. So I go down here to settings, go to personal, and then in here we can change it to light theme. And I just think it's a bit more aesthetically pleasing. And that is it. You've set up your very own self-hosted instance of NAN, and it's always going to be hosted at this address. So you can come back and exit with your username and password, and this is going to continuously run your automations whilst you sleep. What we're going to move on to now is navigating the dashboard here and working through the basics step by step to create our very first automation. N8N is a workflow automation platform, and what that means and what that enables is us to automate pretty much any of our work by connecting different softwares visually on a workflow. So I'm going to run through first the different fundamental building blocks of N8N, which are workflows, credentials, and executions. You'll open up your N8N environment in a screen like this, and what you'll see is an overview on the left-hand side, and that's where we store all of our flows, as you can see down here. We've then got a link to the N8N templates, which we'll cover later as another tip. We've got variables, don't worry about that for now. And then we've got some help and support section. The first thing you're going to come across here are the workflows, credentials, and executions. You can think of workflows as the logic that connects all of our different software pieces. The credentials are just our keys. So how do we get into each of those softwares? We need our password, we need our username. So that is where your credentials are stored. And then you can think of executions as our history of all of the logs. So when we execute our logic, we need our keys to make sure it works and that we get into the right accounts. And then the executions show us our history of all previous workflows that have run, including the errors and those successful as well. Understanding those fundamental building blocks will help you build out your workflows and connect all your software. We're going to jump in now to an actual workflow. So we'll hit workflows on the top here. And what we're going to do is you'll probably see an empty screen here. We're going to go to create workflow up in the top. That's going to open what we call the canvas. And there's a few key important details here. We've got the name of our workflow up here, which we can come in and edit. So we're just going to say test workflow. But you want to be, as descriptive as possible as to what the workflow is doing. We've then got some tags. So tags enable you to easily filter and search through your workflows. So for example, on this one, we're going to tag it with demo. And if we go back, we've saved it, we'll go back, we can see it's got the tag on demo, and we're able to filter here by the demo tag. You can see our new workflows appeared on our home screen here, and to get back into it, we can click into it. So when we are in the canvas here, we have a few different other options. We have the editor mode, where we can create visually our workflows, which we'll start doing in a moment. And then we have our executions, which show us all of the history or the executions we spoke through before of this workflow. So individually in a workflow, you can see all of the previous executions and look through whether it was successful and what data was sent. It's a really powerful feature. If we go back to editor, there's a few more things here. If we make a change to the canvas by adding a first step, it will prompt us to save in the top right corner, or we can hit Command or Control S to save. We then have a test workflow feature at the bottom, and we'll cover this more later, but we can hit test workflow. And if we test that, it will run our current workflow that's saved in the environment on the canvas. Now, when you come in here for the first time, it's easy to get overwhelmed with the number of options available. We're going to break them down now into 4 key categories. These 4 key categories will make it really simple for you to understand how to build out your first workflow. If we come back to this blank canvas here, so delete any nodes we've got on there, then we can add a first step, or we can click the plus to open the nodes panel here, or alternatively, we can just hit tab on our keyboard. That opens up the options for the first node. A node is just an event taking place on our canvas. So that could be how we activate a workflow first. So we're always going to need to activate workflow somehow, whether that be a manual trigger. So we'll open up the manual trigger. And the manual trigger is mainly for when we are testing things. This just means whatever is attached to this first manual trigger node will always become activated when we hit the test workflow button. There are other ways to trigger a flow, and that will be the ways you use in production. So we might have on an app event where we've got different software that could trigger. So for example, Airtable has a trigger on new Airtable event. Whenever something happens in Airtable, that will trigger a corresponding reaction to whatever we connect this to. We'll remove the Airtable node and we'll go back to the triggers. We might want something to run once daily, so we can add a schedule trigger and determine inside the trigger itself how often or how frequently we want it to run. If we remove and go back to the triggers, we're now getting to the less frequently used triggers, but also important. On a webhook call, now this may not make sense immediately, but we can pass data from an external service to activate our workflows, and that's what a webhook is. And we will go into full detail later on APIs and webhooks and how to use those. They're not as complicated as they seem. And then we've got a few other triggers on a form submission. So N8N actually allows us to submit a form through its user interface that starts off a workflow and will pass in the details from the form. We can activate workflows from other workflows. So we can trigger one workflow from another. That's really important for scalability and reusability in our workflows, and we'll cover that later. And then finally, we've got on chat message. So we can actually have a chat window in the screen, and we can type a message in here and it will activate workflow here. Once we have a trigger, so we'll just put in the trigger manually as we're testing for now, the node will enable you to connect to other nodes. That's where we come on to the second element of this, which is action. Actions are how we connect to all of our business software. So we might use Google Sheets or Outlook or Slack or Notion. We need to take an action to connect to our business systems. And as you can see on N8N integration page, they have pre-built 1028 integration. And then any that are not pre-built already, we're able to connect to their API. And that makes this effectively able to connect anything to everything. Really, really powerful software for all of your business needs. We're going to go through some of the key actions in a moment, but the first action is connecting to a platform that we're using in our business. So back in the N8N canvas, we have our trigger, and now we're going to connect some actions and see what actions are possible. So when you open up the nodes window here, we have different categories. We have advanced AI, which we're not going to cover right now. We have action in an app. So what we just covered was that we can connect to any of these apps. We have data transformation. So this is a specific action that takes place on the data we're using. So for example, we might take data from our Google Sheets and manipulate that by adding some data or removing some data or stripping out some formatting of some data. That is what the data transformation nodes are for. And then within Flow, we're able to also execute conditional logic. And what that means is if our data meets certain conditions, we can branch it and take an action on it. If it does not meet certain conditions, we can take an entirely separate action. So it means we can interact in the canvas with the data from our software that we're using in our business. We then have some core nodes. So these core nodes are just made up from these 4 categories anyway, and they just contain some of the most popular used nodes. And then newly, we have human in the loop, where we're able to get feedback from a human when we're using AI. Finally, it gives us the option of multiple triggers, which we will cover later. But this gives us the option to add a second trigger into our workflow, so that not only can we have a test workflow trigger, but we might have a scheduled trigger. We might have a when executed by another workflow trigger. So there could be multiple ways to trigger our workflow, and all of them can be active at once. The fourth tip is around connecting easily to any of our software platforms. This is the easiest way to do it. So we're going to hit tab again or hit the cross and open up an app. And for the example, we're going to use Airtable. So we know we use Airtable frequently. So we're going to click on the Airtable node. We have now got to select the action, but this doesn't restrict you from changing the action in future. But for the sake of the demo, we want to search our records in order to pull all of our records from the data. And there are other actions that we can take. So if I go back to the canvas here, you can see that this is totally not connected to our test workflow. So if we were to run test workflow, it's not going to run Airtable node. So what we need to do is just click the cross and drag it over to Airtable. The next part is how do we actually connect to an Airtable that's outside of N8N. So you can see on the left-hand side, we've got inputs here. In the middle, we've got our software that we want to connect to, so Airtable, and we make transformations in the middle here. And then on the right-hand side, we've got outputs. So it's a three-way sequence that we can visually see our data flow through. So we can see what we've received into Airtable. We can see or take actions on that data in the middle, and then we can see exactly what that's returned in our outputs. But first, before we see the inputs and outputs, we actually need to connect to the system. So inside of every node, you'll have a series of tasks that you'll need to complete, or a series of steps where it will ask you to choose a drop-down in order to select the most appropriate action. The first one is always going to be a credential to connect with. So right now, we do not have it connected to any Airtable that we have externally. So here might appear empty to you, and you're going to create a new credential here. Now, these will be different app, but they have the same core concepts. And always, N8N have some really useful documentation linked that you can go directly to the documentation for that specific node, i.e. Airtable, and see exactly where to access the different credentials. So for Airtable, we need a personal access token, and we can get that by going to the personal access tokens page, opening that up and clicking create a new token. It's then going to give us this page, and we're going to just, for example, call it N8N test demo. And then back in the credentials, it will tell us what scopes we need to add to our token. And the scopes are just what access are we giving that token? Is that token able to read our records? Is it able to write to our Airtable? Is it able to delete records? All of these things, we need to give it the right scope so that it's able to perform the right actions on our behalf. So we're going to add data records write, data records read, and schema bases read. So we've added those three scopes, and now we need to tell it what tables is it able to access. So we've got to add a base here. So if you click add a base and scroll down, it will give us all the different options for connecting. You can see I have a lot of different bases here. So to do this, we need to have already set up a table. If you go into Airtable and set up a demo table, you can see I've set up a base here, Scrapes.ai tutorials, and then we've got two tables, financial and demo data. For now, we're just going to use the demo data table, and we're going to put test name, random notes, assign it to me, and it's in progress. So what we now need to do is connect this table to our access token, or to connect our access token to this table. So if we go back to the Builder Hub, we go add a base, and we know it was called Scrapes.ai tutorials. That should now appear there. Once we create the token, we've then given it permission to access that table. And I'm going to copy that here by clicking here. And we're going to go back to our workflow where we were setting up our Airtable token. And all we're going to do is paste into our access token field. And critically, we're going to rename this, because you'll have too many otherwise that are named token 1, token 2, token 3. And when you come to use them in the future, you won't have any idea what platform they relate to. So we'll give it a sensible name like Airtable Test API token, and we'll save that. And that should confirm then in green if it's successfully connected to our software. There we go, connection tested successfully. Perfect, we can leave from there. So we come back to our Airtable canvas and we've connected up our test workflow trigger to our Airtable node. And you can see that's got a name Airtable. Now tip number 5 is about visually seeing the inputs, the transformations and the outputs. So what we're going to do is we're going to fill out in the middle here some options in order to pull our data. So right now we're receiving no inputs because we've got the test workflow trigger, which is just pushing an empty set of data to our Airtable. But what that will enable this to do is run the Airtable node. So right now we're searching for a record and we're going to search, but like I said, we can change any of the methods here and they've all got a description underneath. So we want to search or list all of our records. We're going to connect it to a base, and this is all Airtable specific naming, and each node you connect to will have specific names for here, but Airtable uses base. So we're going to connect to the list, and you can see that's now given us access to that. Whereas if we had not filled out this correctly and given it the correct access, this would not appear in the list and we'd have an error at this point. So now we know we can connect to the base successfully. We will choose the demo data table, and we're not going to filter by anything because we want to return all of our records. So we can test that step, and you can see on the right hand side, it's now returned the records that we just put in the table. If you want to visually move these records, you're able to click and drag and drop all of these different fields, and we can now see much clearer the outputs, which was the test name random assignee. You'll notice that this is in a strange format. So this is a JSON format, and tip 6 is about managing all of the different data formats and understanding those properly. So tip number 6 is interpreting table data, JSON data, and schema data and figuring out the difference. And it's actually really simple when you distill it to its principles. So to make this easier to understand, I've expanded the data set and we've got now name, task, and status. And I've put in some demo data in our Airtable, and we're going to pull that data using the test step. And you will see we have a full record of all 20 items in our JSON data table. You have this on the inputs as well, but because we've got no inputs at the moment, we can't format those. So table first is a really easy way to visualize your data. That's how we conventionally see our data in a business. We normally see it in a spreadsheet table. Each row is its own unique set, exactly like we see it in Airtable. So this is the way that a human would probably interpret it. The schema, you can see, just distills it to a single record. And the reason for that is the schema is just understanding our fields in the data rather than the data itself. So this tells us that we've got an ID field, a created time field, a name, a task, and a status field. The A next to it just symbolizes that it's a certain data type. In this case, it's just a string, which is just text. All of them are just text. You may notice that we didn't have ID and created time